Bedtime Stories for My Sister Juniper. How the Alphabet Was Made by Rudyard Kipling. The week after Taffamai Metalumai, we will still call her Taffy, best beloved, made that little mistake about her daddy's spear and the stranger man and the picture letter and all, she went carp fishing again with her daddy. Her mummy wanted her to stay at home and help hang up hides to dry on the big drying poles outside their Neolithic cave, but Taffy slipped away down to her daddy quite early, and they fished. Presently she began to giggle, and her daddy said, "Don't be silly, child." "But wasn't it inciting?" said Taffy. "Don't you remember how the head chief puffed out his cheeks, and how funny the nice stranger man looked with the mud in his hair?" "Well do I," said Tegamai. "I had to pay 2 deer skins, soft ones with fringes, to the stranger man for the things we did to him." "We didn't do anything," said Taffy. "It was Mummy and the other Neolithic ladies, and the mud." "We won't talk about that," said her daddy. "Let's have lunch." Taffy took a marrow bone and sat mousy quiet for 10 whole minutes while her daddy scratched on pieces of birch bark with a shark's tooth. Then she said, "Daddy, I've thinked of a secret surprise. You make a noise, any sort of noise." "Ah," said Tegamai. "Will that begin with?" "Yes," said Taffy. "You look just like a carp fish with its mouth open. Say it again, please." "Ah, ah, ah," said her daddy. "Don't be rude, my daughter." "I'm not meaning rude, really and truly," said Taffy. "It's part of my secret surprise think. Do say, 'Ah,' Daddy, and keep your mouth open at the end, and lend me that tooth. I'm going to draw a carp's fish mouth wide open." "What for?" said her daddy. "Don't you see?" said Taffy, scratching away on the bark. "It will be our little secret surprise. When I draw a carp fish with his mouth open in the smoke at the back of our cave, if Mummy doesn't mind, it will remind you of that 'ah' noise. Then we can play it was me, jumped out of the dark and surprised you with that noise, same as I did in the beaver swamp last winter." "Really?" said her daddy, in that voice that grown-ups use when they are truly attending. "Go on, Taffy." "Oh, bother," she said. "I can't draw all of a carp fish, but I can draw something that means a carp fish's mouth. Don't you know how they stand on their heads rooting in the mud? Well, here's a pretense fish carp. We can play that the rest of him is drawn. Here's just his mouth, and that means 'ah.'" And she drew this little shape. "That's not bad," said Tegamai, and scratched on his own piece of bark for himself. "But you've forgotten the feeler that hangs across his mouth." "But I can't draw, Daddy." "You don't need to draw anything of him except just the opening of his mouth and the feeler across. Then we'll know he's a carpfish, because the perches and trouts haven't got feelers. Look here, Taffy." And he drew this shape like a carp's mouth with a cross across it. "Now I'll copy it," said Taffy. "Will you understand this when you see it?" And she drew. "Perfectly," said her daddy, "and I'll be quite as surprised when I see it anywhere as if you had jumped out from behind a tree and said, 'Ah!' Now make another noise," said Taffy, very proud. "Yeah," said her daddy, very loud. Said Taffy, "that's a mixing noise. The end part is 'ah, carpfish mouth,' but what can we do about the front part? Yer, and 'ah, ah, yeah.' It's very like the carpfish mouth noise. Let's draw another bit of the carpfish and join 'em," said her daddy. He was quite incited, too. "No, if they're joined, I'll forget. Draw it separate. Draw his tail. If he's standing on his head, the tail will come first. Sides, I think I can draw tails easiest," said Taffy. "A good notion," said Tegamai. "Here's a carpfish tail for the yer noise," and he drew it. "I'll try now," said Taffy. "'Member I can't draw like you. Will it do if I just draw the split part of the tail and the sticky down line for where it joins?" And she drew a Y. Her daddy nodded, and his eyes were shiny bright with excitement. "That's beautiful," she said. "Now make another noise, Daddy." "Oh," said her daddy, very loud. "That's quite easy," said Taffy. "You make your mouth all around like an egg or a stone, or an egg and a stone will do for that." "You can't always find eggs or stones. We'll have to scratch around something like one," and he drew it. "My goodness," said Taffy, "what a lot of noise pictures we've made. Carp mouth, carp tail, and egg. Now make another noise, Daddy. Shh, said her daddy, and frowned to himself, but Taffy was too excited to notice. That's quite easy, she said, scratching on the bark. What? Said her daddy. I meant I was thinking and didn't want to be disturbed. It's a noise just the same. It's a noise a snake makes, Daddy, when it is thinking and doesn't want to be disturbed. Let's make the noise a snake. Will this do? And she drew an S. There, she said, there's another spry secret. When you draw a hissy snake by the door of your little back cave where you mend the spears, I'll know you're thinking hard, and I'll come in most mousy quiet. If you draw it on a tree by the river when you're fishing, I'll know you want me to walk most mousy quiet, so as not to shake the banks. Perfectly true, said Tegamai. And there's more in this game than you think. Taffy, dear, I've a notion that your daddy's daughter has spit upon the finest thing that there ever was since the tribe of Tegamai took to using shark's teeth instead of flints for their spearheads. I believe we've found out the big secret of the world. Why? Said Taffy, and her eyes shone too with excitement. I'll show, said her daddy. What's water in the Tegamai language? Yeah, of course, and it means river, too, like Wagaya, the Wagaya River. What is bad water that gives you fever when you drink it? Black water, swamp water. Yo, of course. Now look, said her daddy, suppose you saw this scratched by the side of a pool in the beaver swamp, and he drew a Y and an O. Carp tail and round egg, two noises mixed. Yo, bad water, said Taffy. Course I wouldn't drink that water because I'd know you said it was bad. But I needn't be near the water at all. I might be miles away hunting, and still it would be just the same as if you stood there and said, Go away, Taffy, or you'll get fever. All that in a carp-fish tail and a round egg. Oh, Daddy, we must tell Mummy quick. And Taffy danced all around him. Not yet, said Tegamai, not till we've gone a little further. Let's see. Yo is bad water, but so is food cooked on the fire, isn't it? And he drew an S and an O. Yes, snake and egg, said Taffy, so that means dinner's ready. If you saw that scratched on a tree, you'd know it was time to come to the cave. So'd I. My Winky, said Tegamai, that's true too. But wait a minute, I see a difficulty. So means come and have dinner, but show means the drying poles where we hang our hides. Horrid old drying poles, said Taffy. I hate helping to hang heavy, hot, hairy hides on them. If you drew the snake and the egg, and I thought it meant dinner, and I came in from the wood and found it meant I was to help Mummy hang the two hides on the drying poles, what would I do? You'd be cross. So'd Mummy. We must make a new picture for show. We can draw a spotty snake that hisses sh, sh, and we'll play that the plain snake only hisses s. I wouldn't be sure how to put in the spots, said Taffy, and perhaps if you were in a hurry you might leave them out, and I'd think it was so when it was show, and then Mummy would catch me just the same. No, I think we'd better draw a picture of the high, horrid drying poles their very selves and make quite sure. I'll put them in after the hissy snake. Look, and she drew S-H-O. Perhaps that's safest. It's very like our drying poles, anyhow, said her father, laughing. Now I'll make a new noise with a snake and a drying pole sound in it. I'll say she. That's Tegamai for spear, Taffy, and he laughed. Don't make fun of me, said Taffy as she thought of her picture letter in the mud in the stranger man's hair. You draw it, Daddy. We won't have beavers or hill this time, said her daddy. I'll just draw a straight line for my spear. And he drew S-H-I. Even Mummy couldn't mistake that for me being killed. Please don't, Daddy. It makes me uncomfy. Do some more noises. We're getting on beautifully. Said Tegamai, looking up. We'll say shoo. That means sky. Taffy drew the snake and the drying pole. Then she stopped. We must make a new picture for that end sound, mustn't we? Shoo, shoo, said her daddy. Why, it's just like the round egg sound made thin. Then suppose we draw a round thin egg and pretend it's a frog that hasn't eaten anything for years. No, said her daddy. If we do that in a hurry, we might mistake it for the round egg itself. Shoo, shoo, shoo. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll open a little hole at the end of the round egg to show how the O noise runs out thin. Ooh, 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 like this. And he drew a U. Oh, that's lovely. Much better than a thin frog. Go on, said Taffy, using her shark's tooth. Her daddy went on drawing, and his hand shook with excitement. He went on until he had drawn all of this. Don't look up, Taffy, he said. Try if you can make out what this means in the Tegumai language. If you can, we've broken the secret. Snake, pole, broken egg, carp tail, and carp mouth, said Taffy. Shoo-ya, sky water, rain. Just then a drop fell on her hand, for the day had clouded over. Why, Daddy, it's raining. Was that what you meant to tell me? Of course, said her daddy, and I told it you without saying a word, didn't I? Well, I think I would have known it in a minute, but that raindrop made me quite sure. I'll always remember now. Shuya means rain, or it is going to rain. Why, Daddy, she got up and danced round him. Suppose you went out before I was awake and drawed Shuya in the smoke on the wall. I'd know it was going to rain, and then I'd take my beaver skin hood. Wouldn't Mummy be surprised? Tegumai got up and danced. Daddies didn't mind doing those things in those days. More than that, he said. Suppose I wanted to tell you it wasn't going to rain much, and you must come down to the river. What would you draw? Say the words in Tegumai talk first. Shu ya las ya maru. Sky water ending, river come too. What a lot of new sounds. I don't see how we can draw them. But I do, said Tegumai. Just a minute, Taffy, we won't do any more today. We've got Shuya all right, haven't we? But this las is a tiger. La, 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 and he waved his shark tooth. There's a hissy snake at the end and the carp mouth before the snake. Us, we only want la, la, said Taffy. We know it. But we have to make la la, and we're the first people in all the world who've tried to do it, Taffy. Well, said Taffy, yawning, for she was rather tired. Las means breaking or finishing as well as ending, doesn't it? So it does, said Tegumai. Your las means there's no water in the tank for Mummy to cook with, just when I'm going hunting, too. And she lost means your spear is broken. If only I'd thought of that instead of drawing silly beaver pictures for the stranger. La, 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 said Tegumai, waving his stick and frowning. Oh, bother. I could have drawn she quite easily, Taffy went on. Then I've drawn your spear all broken, this way, and she drew. The broken spear looked like an L. The very thing, said Tegumai. That's law all over. It isn't like any of the other marks either. And he drew it all out. Now for ya. Oh, we've done that before. Now for maru. Mum, mum, mum. Mum shuts one's mouth up, doesn't it? We'll draw a shut mouth like this. So he drew a little squiggly line. Then the carp mouth opened. That makes ma, ma, ma. But what about this thing, Taffy? It sounds all rough and edgy, like your shark tooth saw when you're cutting out a plank for the canoe, said Taffy. You mean all sharp at the edges like this? And he drew. Exactly, said Taffy, but we don't want all those teeth. Only put 2. I'll only put in 1, said Tegumai. If this game of ours is going to be what I think it was, the easier we make our sound pictures, the better for everybody, and he drew a single shark tooth standing up. Now we've got it, said Tegumai, standing in one leg. I'll draw 'em all on a string like fish. Hadn't we better put in a little bit of a stick or something between each word so they won't rub up against each other and jostle, same as if they were carps? Oh, I'll leave a space for that, said her daddy, and very incitedly he drew them all without stopping on a big new bit of birch bark. Sha ya las ya maru, said Taffy, reading it out sound by sound. That's enough for today, said Tegumai. Besides, you're getting tired, Taffy. Never mind, dear, we'll finish it all tomorrow, and then we'll remember it for years and years after the biggest trees you can see are all chopped up for firewood. So they went home, and all that evening Tegemai sat on one side of the fire and Taffy on the other, drawing yos and yas and shoes and she's in the smoke on the wall, and giggling together until her mummy said, "Really, Tegemai, you're worse than my Taffy." "Please don't mind," said Taffy. "It's only our secret surprise, Mummy dear, and we'll tell you all about it the minute it's done, but please don't ask me what it is now, or else I'll have to tell." So her mummy most carefully didn't, and bright and early next morning Tegemai went down to the river to think out new sound pictures, and when Taffy got up she saw Yalas, waters ending or running out, chalked on the side of the big stone water tank outside the cave. Said Taffy, "these picture sounds are rather a bother. Daddy's just as good as come back here himself and told me to get more water for Mummy to cook with." She went to the spring at the back of the house and filled the tank from a bark bucket, and then she went down to the river and pulled her daddy's left ear, the one that belonged to her to pull when she was good. "Now come along and we'll draw all the leftover sound pictures," said her daddy, and they had a most inciting day of it, and a beautiful lunch in the middle and 2 games of romps. When he came to tea, Taffy said that was her name, and her daddy's and her mummy's all began with that sound, and they should draw some sort of family group holding hands. That was all very well to draw once or twice, but when it came to drawing it 6 or 7 times, Tegemai and Taffy drew it scratchier and scratchier, until at last the tea sound was only a long, thin Tegemai with his arms out to hold Taffy and Teshemai. You can see how that happened. Many of the other pictures were much too beautiful to begin with, especially before lunch. But as they were drawn over and over again on birch bark, they became plainer and easier, till at last even Tegemai said he could find no fault with them. They turned the hissy snake the other way round for the Z sound to show it was hissing backwards in a soft and gentle way. And they made just a twiddle for E because it came into the pictures so often. And they drew pictures of the sacred beaver of the Tegemais for the B sound, and because it was a nasty, nosy noise, they just drew noses for the N sound, till they were tired. And they drew a picture of the big lake pike's mouth for the greedy ga sound, and they drew the pike's mouth again with a spear behind it for the scratchy, hurty ka sound. And they drew pictures of a little bit of the winding Wagar River for the nice windy wa sound. And so on and so forth, following until they had done and drawn all of the sound pictures they wanted, and there was the alphabet all complete. And after thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and after hieroglyphics and demotics and nilotics and cryptics and kufics and runics and dorics and ionics and all other sorts of ruther ricks and ticks, because the wounds and the neguses and the akuns and the repositories of tradition would never leave a good thing alone when they saw it, the fine old easy understandable alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, and the rest of 'em, got back into its proper shape again for all best beloveds to learn when they are old enough. But I remember Tegemai, Bopsalai, and Taphemai, Metalumai, and Teshemai, Tewindro, her dear mummy, and all the days gone by, and it was so, just so, a little time ago, on the banks of the big Wagai. Of all the tribe of Tegemai who cut that figure none remain. On marrow down the cuckoo's cry, the silence and the sun remain. But as the faithful years return and hearts unwounded sing again, comes Taffy dancing through the fern to lead the Surrey spring again. Her boughs are browned with bracken fronds and golden elf locks fly above. Her eyes are bright as diamonds and bluer than the skies above. In moccasins and deerskin cloak, unfearing, free and fair she flits, and lights her little dampwood smoke to show her daddy where she flits. For far, oh very far behind, so far she cannot call to him, comes Tegemai alone to find the daughter that was all to him.